What's up, folks? I'm Chris, your NFL writer here at Occupy Fantasy, here with a look at the giant 13-game Week 18 main slate, the final main slate of the 2022-23 NFL regular season. Thank you for being here and watching along all season long. We've enjoyed the ride. Let's close it out strong, folks, okay? We've got Kenneth Walker III as my favorite play on this slate, the starting running back for the Seattle Seahawks. The biggest reason I like Walker this week isn't his giant role, which is obviously a great reason to play him this week. He's had 71% of team carries in the last 2 weeks and every single red zone carry for the Seahawks in that time frame. My favorite reason to play him on top of that is that Seattle is favored by nearly a touchdown here at home against the Los Angeles Rams in a must-win spot to go to the postseason next week. Motivation is a big thing that is going to shape the way that we attack this slate here in Week 18, and focusing on the plays and players that still have something to play for, whether that be contract incentives or real stakes for their teams, is probably the best way to attack playing Week 18 contests. So Kenneth Walker III, I prefer playing him in all contest types this week fairly heavily. Number 2 running back in the Occupy model this week. Normal agenda of the show. Who are the biggest favorites on the board in this week's action? And what does that tell us about the running backs on those teams? It tells us that we should consider playing them a little bit more heavily because they should be in some positive game scripts, right? We have some pretty large outlierish spreads this week to contend with. The first one is a spread of minus 14.5 points, which is something that two teams are benefiting from this week, the Philadelphia Eagles and the San Francisco 49ers. On the Eagles side of things, Miles Sanders is still going to be the primary tailback to roster here with Philadelphia. The issue with rushing share here is he'll have the majority of it in the backfield, but we are expecting Jalen Hurts to return under center. And if they call their offense normally like they do when Jalen Hurts plays, it means we're looking for Sanders' rushing share to drop from somewhere around 70 to 75% like it was with Gardner Minshew out there to like 55, 60%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but we're looking at touches going from upsides of 20 plus to maybe 11 to 12 to 15 as a ceiling, depending on how things go here. And if this game does get out of hand fairly early, like the spread indicates, we may actually see a little bit more work from Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott, some of the backup players on the Eagles roster. So despite the Eagles being in a really good spot here for their starting running back, Sanders projects to be about 10% owned on DraftKings this week, and therefore a little bit lower owned compared to some of the other guys that we have to discuss coming up here. Good matchup. Eagles with top 10 run blocking in the NFL. The Giants carry the second worst rush defense in the NFL into this matchup as well. So certainly some opportunity for Sanders. The San Francisco 49ers also favored by 14.5. Number 1 ranked running back in our model. Number 1 running back as of right now by ownership in our model, Christian McCaffrey. I think that there's an opportunity to actually go elsewhere here. We do normally advocate under the best of circumstances, sticking to the high-owned running backs in DFS contests. But here in Week 18 with the 49ers, a couple of things are likely to eat into Christian McCaffrey's workload against the Arizona Cardinals. The 49ers may know going into kick at 4:25 p.m. what the result of the Vikings game was and whether or not they have the number 2 seed wrapped up. They'll still be playing for an outside shot at home field advantage throughout the playoffs, but by about halftime or so, they'll probably have a better idea of where they stand. And also, we've got Deebo Samuel returning at wide receiver and Elijah Mitchell returning from injured reserve for the San Francisco 49ers against the Arizona Cardinals this week, which is likely to reduce McCaffrey's touches. Mitchell doesn't have a ton of involvement in the passing game historically for Kyle Shanahan in this offense, so they'll definitely be giving him some carries, and he'll probably clean up late in this game if the Niners are winning. It does seem like the opportunity for Christian McCaffrey to fail on this spot just based off of raw touches is pretty real. And so I think I lean towards going other directions here this week. It does say Eli Mitchell on injured reserve. He has been activated and is expected to play according to team reporters. Next biggest favorite on the board, the Cincinnati Bengals in their matchup with the Baltimore Ravens, a very key AFC North battle to round out the season. Joe Mixon still leading this backfield in touches and carries and red zone opportunities as far as running backs are concerned. average run blocking from the Bengals. This is actually a tough run defense. The Ravens have the 4th best rush defense in the NFL in 2022, according to Football Outsiders DVOA. So maybe actually difficult for Mixon to get going on the ground. His production could come in the passing game where the Ravens are slightly below average defending the running back. The Buffalo Bills favored by 7 at home against the New England Patriots in their first game since last week's really chaotic situation. We've got Devin Singletary and James Cook splitting the opportunities in the backfield for them. Singletary does seem to have the slight edge here as the better play in the backfield. Like Mixon, Bills running backs may have a difficult time getting going on the ground. The Patriots are an above-average rush defense, and the Bills have slightly below-average run blocking on the offensive line. And the matchup in the passing game is not that great as well. So this is an opportunity where maybe a little different, playing some running backs from the Bills, because I do think the passing game is going to be very popular this week. More on that in a little bit. The Dallas Cowboys, they're favored by 6.5. We've got Tony Pollard returning for the Cowboys. It was just some rest last week was the reason that the Cowboys held Pollard out in their matchup with the Titans on the last Thursday Night Football game of the year. We expect Pollard to return to his normal role in this offense, which will be slightly weighted towards a role in the passing game with a healthy amount of running back carries, and Ezekiel Elliott being the primary tailback on early downs on the ground and near the goal line in the red zone. Not too much new information there. We all know how these teams are using their players at this point. Already talked about Kenneth Walker, my favorite running back play on this slate. There are 2 running backs that are not favored by a ton of points this week that are amongst my favorite plays on the board, that are also amongst the field's favorite plays on the board, and that includes Los Angeles Ram running back Cam Akers, who has really come on strong here to close the year out, virtually getting all of the work in the backfield for the Rams. Had the big game on Christmas, obviously. I don't know if we're expecting another near 40 burger for him here against the Seattle Seahawks as the Rams close out their disappointing Super Bowl defense campaign in 2022. But the Seahawks are a below-average rush defense, 25th in the league defending running backs in the running game this year, and they are also a well below-average defense defending running backs in the passing game, 2nd worst in the league. So I actually think Cam Akers is a really, really good opportunity here. A little bit of correlation here with Ken Walker as well in all contest types for offenses that I think will utilize their running backs quite heavily. So I think this is a great way to play the Rams and the Seahawks game, but also this slate in general here in Week 18. And then we also have Tyler Algier with the Atlanta Falcons. Now, a little unclear at this point if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are actually going to rest all of their starters or if they're all going to play a full complement of snaps. Buccaneers are locked into the 4 seed in the NFC. They cannot improve their seeding. They cannot get worse depending on the result of this game. So they are somewhat motivated to stay healthy going into next week's playoff action if they do pull their starters after a quarter or two, and we see typical preseason-esque usage from the Buccaneers here in Week 18, I'd expect the Falcons to continue to go all out with their guys because, let's face it, they've had nothing to play for several weeks in a row now, and they have not really changed anything other than putting Desmond Ridder under center. Tyler Algier has dominated the work in the backfield for them. We see 17-plus carries in the last 3 weeks, a couple of touchdowns in that sample. No reason to expect any different here against the Buccaneers. And as far as the matchup is concerned for Algier, the Buccaneers are roughly average defending running backs in the running game, and they are well above average defending them in the passing game, but a very modest price on Tyler Algier across the board this week. So those are my 3 favorite running backs for low-risk contests this week over on DraftKings. Now, there's one major thing on this slate for you FanDuel players to be aware of. It is the fact that the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions game that is in primetime is on the main slate over there this week. FanDuel released the slate and they weren't sure what the NFL was going to schedule in the late window. They've made the decision for the second week in a row to leave the 8:20 p.m. Sunday night game on the slate. Not only does that open up some opportunity to play someone like Aaron Jones or A.J. Dillon in low-risk contests. Packers are splitting the running back carries there virtually right down the middle. It also gives us an opportunity to get some exposure to them in some high-risk contests. I do like stacking this game on FanDuel specifically. And then as far as running backs are concerned, obviously we have Jones and Dillon with the Packers, but with the Detroit Lions, we have the touchdown machine himself, Jamal Williams, and DeAndre Swift, who has had a healthy role in the passing game. We did advocate for stacking this game on FanDuel in high-risk contests. It has a 49-point total. It is the only game with a total above 43 points this week that is available to play. So approach your play on FanDuel with that in mind and almost treat the slate entirely differently as a result in high-risk contests specifically. I actually do lean towards using the same low-risk group of running backs that I talked about over on DraftKings, over on FanDuel. I don't love any of the running backs in this game for low risk specifically. So Ken Walker III, Tyler Algier, and Cam Akers, regardless of the site that you're playing on, still my favorite group for low-risk running backs in Week 18 contests. At the quarterback position this week, a little bit more concentrated ownership, and that's because obviously we have a ton of options to contend with. But Jalen Hurts, number one quarterback in our model, number one by projected ownership, is expected to return against the Giants. I do think you use him in low-risk contests. I do think if you're playing the Eagles, you play 2-0 or 3-0 stacks in high-risk contests. You don't necessarily bring back a Giant because the Giants are resting their players, and it's a 14.5-point spread. That means Giants players probably not going to get there in DFS contests here in Week 18, so I would lean towards leaving them out of your high-risk lineups entirely. As far as low-risk is concerned, stick to the projected ownership here. Jalen Hurts is a little cheaper than Josh Allen, so I would start with him. And then if we get some news going into Sunday that the Eagles are either not going to play him for health-related concerns or they're going to pull him early, then we could switch over to Josh Allen because the Bills are pretty motivated to play a full game and win here for home field / neutral field reasons that the NFL put out this week. You can certainly find some more information about that from your normal NFL reporters if you don't know what I'm talking about there. But Jalen Hurts, best low-risk quarterback to consider. At the wide receiver position, as always, we can go to our model and we can look at who the field is high on at this point in the week. And Garrett Wilson, number one in our model here with the New York Jets, isn't necessarily the number one option in low-risk contests, but he's inside the top 5 in projected ownership, so I do think you can consider him once again. The most popular value play everyone is going to utilize is New Orleans Saints wide receiver Rashid Shaheed, who has played very well in recent weeks, getting a ton of opportunity, running a ton of routes for the New Orleans Saints. Just $4,200 here on DraftKings, $5,800 over on FanDuel. 4+ targets last 3 weeks. His most targets in that sample came last week alone, even with Chris Olave returning to the starting lineup for the Saints. So Shaheed is definitely very safe, and he's also going to be played pretty heavily by the field. So at a minimum, you want to match the field here and get Shaheed into your low-risk lineups. Other options that rank pretty highly in our model, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs, these high-end weapons from high-end offenses. Not a bad idea to consider any one of them. We'll round out the final slate of the year with Garrett Wilson once again being underpriced for the New York Jets. Quarterback change for the Jets. Wilson will have Joe Flacco under center instead of Mike White, but I don't think that will change the outlook for him here. The tight end position. We have Mark Andrews from the Baltimore Ravens as the most popular play on the slate. We don't have him necessarily as the top play in our model, but when we look at our ownership, he will be the most popular play on DraftKings at $5,400 against the Bengals this week. In low-risk contests, other than Andrews, George Kittle going to be extremely popular. The biggest concern with Kittle isn't matchup related. It's a strong matchup. The Arizona Cardinals have one of the worst defenses defending the tight end on the year. It's just those splits when the 49ers have Deebo Samuel out there and what they do with George Kittle tend to be pretty extreme. So it's pretty possible that the 49ers decrease Kittle's workload in the passing game, and that would have me concerned deploying a play in the $6,000 range on DraftKings, $7,600 on FanDuel at this position, if that does, in fact, actually take place. Dallas Goedert with the Eagles may be a good place to go if Jalen Hurts is already going to be something that we're playing in low-risk contests. But Pat Freiermuth stands out to me here for the Steelers in a must-win game at just $3,800 as one of the primary weapons for the Steelers. But I think Freiermuth will be the place that we see the field goes as far as value tight end is concerned this week. $4,900 per player remaining, including my defense. And going to the model, we have a lot of cheap defenses that are playable this week. Much like last week, a lot of very bad backup quarterbacks are starting to close out the season. So that gives us an opportunity to capitalize on that and have some really strong turnover-worthy play from quarterbacks that we can leverage in high-risk contests with our defenses. Defense that projects to bring the most pressure on the slate, looking at our quarterback model. Dallas Cowboys against the Washington Commanders. The Eagles against the Giants and Tyrod Taylor. The Giants against Jalen Hurts, so the Giants probably a good high-risk defense. The Patriots against Josh Allen. This is just one way to identify high-risk defenses. The model takes this number into account, the projected pressure a defense is going to generate, but also dozens of other metrics to generate our ranking, which has come up with the Atlanta Falcons as the top high-risk defense on the slate against the Buccaneers. In low-risk contests, you will see the field concentrate on the San Francisco 49ers in their matchup with Arizona Cardinals quarterback David Blau, the Vikings in their matchup with Chicago Bears quarterback Nathan Peterman, and the Jets in their matchup with Miami Dolphins quarterback Skylar Thompson. So all these offenses that are employing the third and sometimes fourth quarterback on their rosters going to be targeted heavily by DFS players at the defense position. You can lean into the popular plays and you can use the Vikings and have 6,900 left for your final wide receiver spot if this is the direction you choose to go in low-risk contests, and I don't see anything wrong with that. But I also have no problem deploying the Falcons against the very likely resting Tampa Bay Buccaneers and having 7,400, being able to get up to a little bit of a more high upside play at wide receiver to round out my low-risk lineup. On DraftKings, my favorite stack is the Buffalo Bills against the New England Patriots. We've got Josh Allen and company coming off of an emotional roller coaster on Monday Night Football last week. Thankfully, they've got some really good news about their teammate along the way this week, and you can expect them to have one of the stronger narratives possible going into this matchup. They may have lost their ability to have home field advantage throughout the NFL playoffs, but they've got a real good opportunity here to close out the 2022 campaign strong against the division rival Patriots, and I would expect Allen to come out firing. So I want to get Allen into a high-risk lineup. I want to get Stephon Diggs at wide receiver and Dawson Knox at tight end. Looking at the Bills' usage in the passing game over their last 3 weeks, weeks 14 through 16, excluding the first quarter of the Bengals game there, Dawson Knox actually tied with Stephon Diggs to lead this team in raw targets in that sample. So with Diggs and Knox, you are already locking up the majority of the opportunities in the passing game for the Buffalo Bills against the Patriots. Isaiah McKenzie has seen an uptick as far as his slot role is concerned. Khalil Shakir, Cole Beasley, not really factors here for the Bills. Gabriel Davis, still a very good perimeter wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills that would also make sense in high-risk contests at a little bit of a higher price point than Knox. So that's the reason why he's not the primary place that I want to go here with a Bills stack, but still very playable with a high upside, high average depth of target role for the Bills. And then on the Patriots side, although he is questionable, Jacoby Myers with a near 25% team target share here on the season, the safest way to bring back the New England Patriots against the Bills, and probably the primary wide receiver to use in Patriots stacks if you're brave enough to stack the Patriots against the Bills and use a Bills player as a run back here. We've got 39, 33 per player remaining to finish off a lineup here around the low-risk framework I like of these two running backs, Walker and Akers. We can throw in one of our favorite defense in the model in the Atlanta Falcons, have 4,700 per player remaining to finish off the slate. This is without question the number one way that I'm going to be playing some single entry stuff, some high-risk contests this week, in addition to the other stuff that is posted in the final NFL Daily Plug of the season over at OccupyFantasy.com. Good luck in Week 18 contests, folks. We will be live on our Discord server's voice channel at 11 a.m. on Sunday morning to go through any final questions that you may have on the slate. So that's a really good reason to consider joining our Discord, which is linked in the description of the video below. We will have a Sunday night football plug for the Lions and the Packers game that will be posted by midday on Sunday for you. Good luck in Week 18 contests, everybody, and we will talk to you soon.